Can you see now? Okay, this is the concept that we are seeing last from 10 days. Class object inheritance, polymorphisms. Ah, right. So one thing is pending, that is constructor. Okay. Now let's see practically what exactly concept is, why it is introduced, and what role it play in the Java programs. Okay, so let me tell you the some definition. You know about the function, right? You understood the function, right? So there is some slight difference between the function and constructor. Today we see the constructor and what role it play in Java. That also we are going to see. So the first thing, the constructor. So basically, constructor have a two rules that we need to define and remember. The first thing is that the first property of constructor is it have a same name as that of a class names. What is the first property? Same name, okay, as a class name. So whichever the class name we have, that constructor name also should be same. And the second property is that it don't have any data types. Okay, no data types, no data types. So for example, assume we have a class and that class name is a test. Just assume that. So there is a slight difference between the function and constructor. We need to identify first what exactly the difference is. Assume that there is a class and that class name is a test. Okay. So if I write just the test and the round brackets, because identity of the function is that the function identified by round function, round brackets. If I just writing a test here and this opening and the closing bracket, so though it is a look like a function, but it is a not of functions because it satisfies the two property. First name, first property, it has the same name as of that class name. And the second thing, it don't have any data types. If I add any data type front of these functions, so now this thing will be considered as a function, not a constructor. Okay. So it is very important to satisfy both the property. It's satisfying the first property, it having a same name, but just because of it having a data type, it's not considered as a constructor. But you remove this void, then it is known as a constructor. Okay. Then why the constructor is introduced in the programming, what role it plays, that thing we need to understand. Okay. Generally, what happen whenever we define the class, that class have many functions. But to call that function, we need to create an object, and with the help of object, we are calling that functions, right? But in many programming or in many situation, there are something are compulsory needed to execute in the programmings, right? So whenever the class load, and if you want to keep some execute the function automatically whenever the object is get created, so at that time we'll use the constructor concepts. If we use the functions, until and unless we are not calling function, that things are not get executed. But whichever the compulsory things, if you define in the constructor, it automatically get invoked as soon as you get object created of that class. Okay. So let's see it practically so that you can understood how the constructor work. Well, I have opened this Eclipse. Let me close this. It's very sweet and simple concept, but more important. So we have a school as a project, oops as a packets. I will just right click it and I will create one simple class. Let me give a name as a CNTRs. CNTRs. Fine. As it is a simple class, So now remember that two property of the constructor. And so what is the first property of constructor? It have a same name. So let me define the constructor here. Constructor. What is the first property? It is having a same name, and more important, it don't have any data types. So let's me call here. We can do the same programming that we are doing in a simple functions. So let me give some simple message. This is CNTR. Perfect. So let me create a function as well. I will add some function here. For example, test. As of now, I will comment this thing so that we'll practically understood how exactly differentiate the constructor and functions. Same thing I will add here SYSO. This is function, right? And we know if you want to execute this function, we have only option that we need to create an object of this class, and with the help of that object, we can call that functions. So let's me create CNTR demo. I will write here, for example, CNTR demo. This is a main class. If I want to execute this test functions, so I have only option to create the object of that class, and with the help of that object, we can call that function. If I run this program now, what output should I get? We have one function. We just created the object. We are not calling that function till now. So what output it will print? Is there any output after executing these programs? We'll get no output because we have just created the object. Until and unless we are calling that function, there will be no output. So we need to call that function first, then only all the things which are included in that functions will get executed. Now we are calling this function, that means whatever the things within that function will be get executed, right? This is simple class and object concepts, right? From this it is a clear now, until and unless we are explicitly calling that function, that thing won't get executed. So it is clear that it is a compulsory to call a function to get execute something, right? The constructor say that in the many situation there are a something which is a compulsory need to be get executed. So why should we define that things into the function? Because until and unless we are calling function, that is not executed. But there are compulsory things which is get automatically invoked. So for that constructor is get created. If I define anything within a constructor, okay. Now if I want to execute this constructor, so what should I need to do? We have just created the object. So will the constructor will get execute, or should we call the like object dot constructor, right? A similar thing as we are calling the function, but that is not a way. As soon as we created the object of that class, the constructor automatically get invoked. See, we are not calling it explicitly by creating an object and object dot that constructor name. So this is what the constructor concept is. So there are many things we need to execute compulsory for that particular class. Whichever the things you needed are compulsory things, all the things you should maintain in the constructor. So basically, constructor get automatically invoked as soon as object is get created. There is no need to call explicitly like that we are calling the test, because the property of a function is until and unless you are not calling that function, it will not get executed. But the constructor is a something just by creating a object also we can call that particular constructors. You got the concept? So why we need a constructor? So if you want to execute something, so whichever the things is needed compulsory, so write that function. So then what is the feature of constructor? It increase the speed of executions, right? Speed of execution. How it increase the speed of execution? Because whichever the things we needed, it will automatically get invoked. No? There is no need to explicitly call that function and all that things. After calling that function, only that thing are executing. But there are some things are automatically needed. So write all the things in the within a constructor. He understood the constructor, right? So remember this two property. But if I make it as in void or some data types, it is not giving any error. But if you try to execute now this function, it's not going to execute anything because now that is considered as a function, right? It's satisfying only one property, not the second property. So that's why it's considered as a function. And for calling function, we need to call explicitly c dot cntr. Okay. Now it's going to invoke. Okay. But we want to execute automatically as soon as object is get created. So for that purpose, we just need to define the construct. Now it will execute, though we are not calling that constructors. Got it? So this is a simple constructor. Now let's see some kind of like type of constructors. So there are two, three types of constructor. Now this constructor is considered as a simple constructor. As the function having a type, in the same thing, constructor also have a types. So this is considered as a simple constructor because we are not passing any parameter within the constructor. So this is a simple one, right? I also have mentioned some keywords while defining this. Apart from this, we have seen a final keyword we have seen, super we have seen. Now one more keyword we have today we are going to see, that is nothing but this keyword. Okay. So why we need a this keyword, what is use of this keyword, that also we are going to see. First of all, let's see the type of constructors. Whenever there is a no types, where it is considered as a simple constructor. But if I mention some type over there, like assume that there is a string nm and all that things. So now this thing is considered as a parameterized constructor. Okay. So I can print this thing as well. Sys nm. So then it is a compulsory for the pass the parameter while creating the object because now it is a type of parameterized constructors. Okay, let's check this example also. Simple constructor we have seen. Let's go for the parameterized constructor. So let me write here one more constructor. So now just consider, I will comment this. This is a simple constructor. Now I will define some parameterized constructor. C and tr. I will some pass some parameter like string name. Got it? Let me print this. N. Now, if I try to execute this constructor, you can see you find the error here because now that class constructor needs some parameter. So it says that pass one string parameter here. So I need to pass some string parameter here. So now this is considered as a parameterized constructor, right? So we are not passing parameter to the functions. We are passing parameter to the constructor, and it automatically we can, while creating the object also, we can pass the constructor. Because in general, what happen? We are always habit to see the things related to the function only, but that thing should work also with the class. Yeah. So whenever you are seeing this kind of code, just consider as it is a kind of construct which need to pass some parameter and then only get executed. Okay. So let's assume now, after passing the parameter to that constructor, now I want to access this name outside of this constructor. Okay. Welcome. And I add some name here plus assume that name. But if we see that this function is not get executed outside of this function, because this consider as a local function. So let me assume I will define some name here, string string name, right? So now we have one parameter here. This is also nm. This is also nm. And if I pass some parameter here, and I will call these functions. So what output should I get? In the constructor, we are passing name, and that name we are trying to print outside of the other cases. So while creating an object, we are passing parameter, and now with the help of function, we are calling that value. So what output should it print? The things whichever should have passed. But if we actually check this output, we'll not getting any kind of output here. We are getting a null. Why it is so? Because it is a local variable. It is not get assigned to this. So to initialize this value or pass this local variable to this value, this keyword is get used. So I need to mention here this dot nm equal to nm dot. This dot nm is equal to nm. So now this keyword points to this variable, that whichever the variable is this is the same as this, means assign the value of this to the this nm. So this keyword points to the current objects. It tells assign this value to this variable. And now if you run this program, you can get the output as a things which you're passing to the parameter as a functions. Got it? And one more property to use the this. Suppose if you are using some other variable here, then there is a no need to pass the this. Okay, it is a simple things. Is there is a difference between the passing parameter and declare parameters? So there is no need to write the this. It automatically consider to assign the value. But there is a confusion when the same keyword is passed in the global variable also and in local variable also. So it will get confused. Which value should assign to which? Hmm. So whenever there is a parameter as well as variable names are same, then we need to explicitly point that variable to say that this is the same variable as that you are passing to this variable. So for this purpose, we need to pass here this dot nm equal to nx. So now this value, this parameter is get copied, and this parameter we are printing it. Okay. So now this is considered as a parameterized constructor. param c and tr. Got it? So the two type of constructor we are seeing. First one is a simple constructor and second is a parameterized constructor. There is a one more constructor that is a considered as a default constructor. Let's see one simple example of default constructor so that we'll come to know how constructor this works. Okay. Let me remove this. So assume that we are defining a three variable integer a, integer n, comma, float f, comma, string n. So as of now, I'm not passing any value to these variables. Okay. So let me integer integer plus n, and I will pass some parameter is this, suppose float f, fine, and the third parameter is string n. Now just tell me, if I run this test functions, what output should I get? If I run this function, what output? Name. So there is an integer, and so basically the question is that what are the default value of integer, float, and string? So what is the value of n here? What is the value of f here? And what is the value of nm here? We are not passing any variable value. We are just declare that value and we are printing it back. So in that scenario, what output should it default value get printed? What is the default value of integer, default value of float, and the default value of string? So what should be the output? Can you any guesses for this? 1 0.1 and no, that should not be the answer. Okay, so let's me execute this. If you consider as default value of integer is always a 0, default value of float is always a 0.0, and the default value of string is always considered as a null. Okay, if I run this program, so we'll come to know we are getting the default value of integer is a 0, float at 0.0, and the string as a null. So for this purpose, which is who is responsible to pass this default value? So to pass this default value, the things which is responsible, that is nothing but default constructor. Default constructor is responsible to pass this default value. Okay, there is an always a constructor while creating an object. Okay, that is nothing but default. If you pass that constructor, so it work accordingly that. But if you are not creating any constructor, so still there is a default constructor is not exist. So when it is in a role, whenever you are not passing any value, so the default constructor automatically pass that particular value. So getting the concept of constructor. So this thing is a pending among from our list. So why we need a constructor? Whenever we want to execute some things, automatically as soon as object is get created, at that time we'll go with the constructor. And what are the two basic feature of property of constructor? First thing, it has the same name of that class name, and the second is very important. The function can also have a same name of the class name, but the main identity is nothing but there is a no data type is a main identity. Okay, because we'll get confused. Function also have a round bracket and the constructor also have a round bracket. But the main difference is to identify is there is a no data type in exist before the that data types. So functions or construct. So remember these properties. I will share you this sample code. Try to execute it at your side and the get the outputs. Okay. On Monday, what we'll do, we are going to revise this all the concept of constructor once again. Okay. Right from class object, inheritance, all type of inheritance, polymorphisms, encapsulation, abstraction, interface, and the constructor. Okay, so that you can able to connect at which situation which concept should be get used. And even you have any doubts among that whatever we done up to now, so you can ask, because in Java the most time consuming concept is nothing but object oriented. And apart from this, all other rest programming are just a general programmings, because this is the only concept which is not we are not just write the code and get the output. We need to understand it practically, which concept is suitable for which situations. So that understanding is important in object oriented programming concept, because it is not just a general purpose programming language. It's having a reason when to use which concept. It is the same thing like when to use a bicycle, two-wheeler, four-wheeler, train, and the aeroplane. So as we have a simple clarity which situation, which traveling thing should be used, in the same way you should have a knowledge of this about the oops. Like this is a situation where should I go for the inheritance concept, or should I use an encapsulation? Should I use an abstraction or the interface? This much understanding is important. Okay, so we'll summarize all the things whatever we have done up to now on this coming Monday, and we'll do the next thing after that. What should it be? We can line up all the things of Java. Okay. Today you understood the concept of constructor. Okay, fine. So I will share these programs. We'll see you on Monday on the regular times 9:45, and we'll do all the further things after revising this all the concepts. Okay. If you have any doubt up to that, you can practice all the OOPS concept till Monday. I will ask all the question also. Okay. And even though I will give you some assignment list, try to solve that concept on this Sunday only, so that you can get revisions. That test also I consider as how much you understood the concepts. Okay. I will share you this test by tomorrow morning, and you can do the whole day to solve that things. And compulsory it should be get solved by everybody. Okay. So try to solve those things, and whichever the things you not understood, we'll clarify on Monday. Okay, guys. So bye bye. Good night. We'll see you on Monday. Yes. Bye bye.